What is up, my sunlight samurais, my astronauts, you alpha energy males? Let's talk about creatine, the most widely used and most studied supplement out there on testosterone, DHT, dopamine, mood, and all of those related alpha benefits. Let's dive in. Right, so this is the article that I wrote about creatine and DHT. Link will be in the description. If you've ever used creatine, had good benefits, drop a comment. Let me know how did that go for you. Right, so okay, let's start with testosterone, creatine on testosterone. Not a lot of people know that your creatine can actually help to increase low levels of testosterone. So this group, they had a quite decent boost in testosterone, going from about 14.5 up to almost 17, about 16.5. And so low levels of ATP, this is my main speculation, is that low levels of ATP causes low testosterone. So low ATP, low testosterone. And as creatine increases ATP, testosterone likely also goes up. There's obviously a peak at how effective it will be, but creatine can have a good effect on your testosterone and ultimately long-term help you build more muscle and help you feel more alpha. In terms of DHT, we all know this. This is why most people actually, one of the first supplements that people use when it comes to DHT optimization as well. And so they had two groups in this study. They had the creatine group loaded with 25 grams and 25 grams of glucose for 7 days, whereas the placebo group used only 50 grams of glucose for 7 days. So you can see initially they had the testosterone increased by 56%. Boom! Quite a big boost in DHT from probably combining the creatine with the glucose. And then you will see when they went to the lower dose, they went to 5 grams of creatine with 25 grams of glucose, and the placebo group had 30 grams of glucose. You can see their DHT went down a little bit, only up to 40% over baseline. So it was still over baseline, but higher doses most likely more effectively helps to keep your DHT high. So if you want to really optimize your DHT, 3 or 5 milligrams can work. But maybe try higher. Maybe try 20 to 25 grams of creatine for like a month or so. See how that feels. Then we have creatine on dopamine and mood. So dopamine release is also ATP dependent, right? And so the brain is the metabolic rate of the brain is extremely high. So the brain is a highly energetic, complex organ consuming approximately 20% of total resting energy, despite accounting for only about 2% of the total body mass. So neurons require a constant supply of ATP for different purposes. So creatine is important for resynthesizing ATP, particularly during times of increased metabolic demand, such as sleep deprivation, mental health conditions, or neurological diseases or stress. So creatine increases creatine phosphate. You can see this creatine phosphate right there. And what this creatine phosphate helps with is to create ATP. So when you use the ATP, right, you create ADP or AMP, and then the creatine phosphate can then be rapidly used to recreate ATP, recycle that ATP, keep you in a high ATP state very rapidly. And so what does this have to do with dopamine? So creatine increases dopamine by increasing ATP. ATP itself promotes dopamine and norepinephrine release in the brain. Thus, basically, low ATP leads to low dopamine and low mood. You will oftentimes see people that just tired all the time, not be physically, but also mentally tired, have low dopamine. Creatine also is protecting the brain against stress, and chronic stress leads to low dopamine. It's being neuroprotective to dopaminergic neurons specifically. So it does so by improving mitochondrial function, decreasing reactive oxygen species production, and preventing excitotoxic damage from intercellular calcium. And then also improving the effectiveness of dopaminergic therapies. It seems to enhance the effects of the dopamine signaling in general. So on top of that, creatine has antidepressant and pro-energizing effects by activating the adenosine and dopamine D1 and D2 receptors. So not that only does it increase dopamine, it also acts on the dopamine D1 and D2 receptors. So this is why I have creatine as part of my dopamine dream team stack. So if you want high dopamine, creatine can help. So creatine on serotonin. Too much serotonin is involved with social isolation, awkwardness, apathy, anhedonia, depression, anxiety. We don't want too much serotonin. Creatine has been shown to lower the free tryptophan to tyrosine ratio. More tyrosine, less tryptophan, more dopamine, less serotonin. So free tryptophan is a rate-limited factor in serotonin synthesis. So creatine can increase the dopamine to serotonin ratio, helping you to feel more energized and euphoric. So higher serotonin ratio to dopamine contributes to those feelings of fatigue and low motivation drive. Creatine also has antidepressant effects by activating the serotonin 1A receptor. This is the autoreceptor, which means that when you activate it, it lowers the production of serotonin. So zinc also acts on this receptor and potentiates the effectiveness of antidepressants. So creatine should also be able to enhance the effectiveness of antidepressants. And then in terms of improving brain function, so creatine has been shown to improve cognition, communication, self-care, personality, behavior, and reductions in headaches, dizziness, fatigue in children with mild IBD, so traumatic brain injury. So mild IBD isn't that uncommon. It's actually it can happen easily with football, boxing, soccer, or via any little accident where you like bump your head, maybe even repetitively, you know? So during stress, the structure of your brain changes, literally, like the grays and the whites and like this actual structures of the brain. And this can contribute to depression. So various antidepressants can help to reverse this. Interestingly, creatine can do the same, and it's a much safer option if you ask me. So creatine can change this pathological changes in the brain structures. Creatine can even help with anxiety. One study has suggested that creatine is lower in the white matter of patients with general anxiety disorder, and that's related to early trauma. As creatine supplementation has been shown to increase taurine levels in the brain, which also has antidepressant and anti-anxiety effects. I think this is a very big reason how creatine does have mood uplifting benefits is by increasing taurine. So if you maybe use a little bit of creatine and a little bit of taurine, that should be even stronger mental effects that you would get. So creatine also helps modest improvements in sleep and depression in PTSD, people with PTSD. And then creatine supplementation for brain purposes. So it would seem that creatine uptake in the brain is much slower than into muscle. So you might need very much higher doses, like 20 grams a day for 4 weeks, instead of the regular, just 3 to 5 grams. And so this kind of like ties in with the DHT aspect, is that you might need 20 grams to really optimize your DHT level. So if you want to optimize DHT, brain function, mood, energy and stuff, maybe try high doses of creatine instead of like the regular low dose. Try the 20 grams, so you feel. And then on a side note, this GAA, which is the creatine precursor, is actually better taken up into the brain than creatine itself. So perhaps if you want to use smaller doses of creatine, you can use GAA with 5 grams of creatine daily, and you might get the same effects. Right, so in terms of sleep lowers testosterone, sleep prevents sleep loss, and poor sleep, it drops testosterone and mood. So testosterone spikes during restful sleep, and sleep has been postulated to promote brain energy restoration. And sleep loss causes brain deterioration, cognitive deterioration. Sleep loss leads to an increase in adenosine, which increases overall fatigue during the day. Creatine supplementation helps to prevent this. And so it basically helps to prevent that excessive increase in adenosine. So the more adenosine you have, the more caffeine you need. You're kind of like in this vicious cycles, and creatine can help you snap out of that cycle. Creatine is specifically helpful for tasks that place a heavy stress on the prefrontal cortex during sleep deprivation. Creatine might be able to improve sleep quality due to increased taurine and ornithine levels in the body. All right, let's lastly address some of the myths about creatine. We have creatine is better. So I wrote a whole article on this. Please go check that out. Creatine is not better than creatine. Some people claim that creatine, which is a 50-50 mix of GAA and creatine monohydrate, is superior to creatine monohydrate alone, which isn't true. I've written about it here, so please check out that article. Creatine is not freaking better than regular creatine monohydrate. Creatine causes hair loss. So due to the fact that creatine increases DHT, some people are concerned that it contributes to hair loss. So I've written about how DHT doesn't cause hair loss, and hair loss is caused by a multitude of reasons, such as inflammation, loss of blood flow, hormonal dysregulation in general, and nutritional deficiencies. So creatine lowers inflammation, improves vascular function, and helps to improve your hormones, so it more likely is going to have a beneficial effect. And no study using creatine ever has reported hair loss as a side effect. And there's a bunch of studies on creatine, okay? And none of them reported hair loss as a side effect. Creatine causes water retention. So this is a very common misconception. And so initially your muscles might, so creatine is an osmolyte, meaning it attracts water, right? So the creatine is going into the muscle and it pulls the water into the muscle. And that actually helps to make your muscles look bigger, but the water is in the muscle, not under the skin. It's in the muscle, right? So if you do get bloating, just give it a week or two. It should pass. And so some studies have found that short-term 3 days, creatine supplementation increases water retention, primarily attributing to increased intracellular volume. However, longer-term studies, 4+ weeks, show that creatine didn't alter total body water, intra or extracellular, relative to body mass. So just wait it out. But if you still have water retention, then instead you can use creatine HCl. And people that use that one have reported that that one doesn't give them water retention. So give that a shot. All right, guys, I hope this video was helpful and it emphasized the importance of creatine. Again, like eating animal foods, eat meat where you get the creatine from. Helpful for increasing testosterone, DHT, brain energy, dopamine, making you feel good, optimizing the dopamine to serotonin ratio, everything that you need to feel more alpha. Creatine can help you do that. And you might need higher doses initially. So if you've never really experimented with loading doses of creatine, maybe go to 20 grams for 4 weeks and see how that alters your mood, dopamine, sleep, energy, all of the good stuff. All right, guys, I hope this video was helpful. If you've used creatine, pop it in the comments. I want to know how you felt on high creatine. I will check you in the next one. Cheers, guys.